Welcome to Expedition Self on OMTimes Radio with lifelong learner, entrepreneur, and creator of the worlds of Expedition Self, Sam Parrotto. Sam shares 4 decades of studying, guiding, and teaching how to go inside so we can build an incredibly powerful, dynamic, and validating relationship with the self. Expedition Self is laced with stellar, unexpected insights about what it means to be human. Listen now and ignite your self-development process with Sam Parrotto.
Well, hello, and you are on Expedition Self Live here, and I'm Sam Parrotto. Thank you for coming today. We are going to have some interesting conversation about money. And you know, each week I talk about different slices of life and how they connect with what it actually means to be a human being, how to go deeper inside of yourself. I think about this idea of what does it mean to be human and realize that no one actually ever teaches it as a subject straight out, especially when you're growing up. And so as I have gone through life, I've just appreciated more and more that there are so many lessons for us, right? And this deeper inside stuff, it's a bit complex because although it makes sense to the mind, right, our intellect as an idea, it's much trickier to actually open to the experiential stuff that exists inside of us and operates beyond what you actually think about, like what's in the unconscious self and what lives in the cells of the body. So today, we're going to talk about money, money, money. I know there's lots of songs. Money, 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 money. Okay. So this is a part of life that captivates all of us for one reason or another. You know, it's so closely tied to our sense of survival and being enough and having enough. And even the way we gain stature within our community sometimes. So today we're going to explore some of the underlying factors that are at play inside of this idea of money as part of being human. And I hope that maybe you'll get just a bit closer to your specific relationship with money. So, okay, now this is a call-in show. So if you'd like to call in, talk about this very chock full subject, of course, I'd love to hear from you. The number is 202-570-7057. Okay, well, let's get started here. So, do you have enough money? Do you feel like it's always an issue that you're worried about, or is something that just kind of coasts along and does what you need it to do? Well, if we start with the obvious, I'd say, did you grow up feeling like you had enough money? And how did your family deal with it? And what were the messages you took away from it? See, when you think about, do you have enough money today? We want to go back to where you started. Right? So these are the questions you're going to want to start with. Bottom line, was there a sense that money was outside of your control, that there wasn't enough to go around, and that you couldn't count on having what you needed? All right, that's the kind of question you want to be thinking about as we talk today. Was there a sense that money was outside of your control? And I'm going to share quite a bit about my journey with money today because I feel like it helps lay the pieces of the conversation I'd like to be in with you. So I have an early memory of being a child. I think I was like 6. And my mom, she got this idea of making stuffed puppy dogs with big floppy ears and then selling them. And she came home and she said, how would you like to help me? And if you'd help me and we sell them, then I'll share some of the proceeds with you. I was totally enrolled in that idea. I mean, I don't know what I thought I was going to buy, but my head was like, ooh, money. So it was a remarkable experience as I look back on it now. I mean, brilliant, really, on my mom's part. So I was going to sew on the eyes and do the hand stitching that I could handle. And she got stuck, of course, with a lion's share of the work. But then it went further. She actually did sell 10 of them for $15 a piece, and I did get a piece of the action. Now, I don't remember exactly how much I got, but the experience itself has stuck with me for so long. The very idea that you could make something, like create something, and then someone would want that thing that you made. And then you would get money to go buy something that you wanted. I don't know. It blew my mind. And it was done at such a young age that it just kind of entered into my body and my psyche and permanently imprinted this kind of understanding about that you could do something and get something back for it. So I'd like you to compare my story to your life. How did money or what you wanted get into your hands? And was it available to you? And was it a dead end, like you either had it or you didn't? You see, what happened with that experience and some others is that this message got very clear, right? If you didn't have it, you could do something to get it. And there's power in them, their words, big power, because it's like, I don't have to just live with what I've got. I can do something about it, right? And our sense of agency is so central to our own relationship to having a fulfilling life. The other message that came through that experience was that effort is needed, creative effort to generate money. So for me, I didn't expect to create more money unless I was willing to put effort into it. So this idea that you have to work for what you get, it got very clear in my head. Now, as I've gotten older, I've questioned, do you really have to work that hard to make money? But that's for later in the show or another one. So I'm going to share another story about like how I started to look through the lens of money. During that same time, my stepfather introduced me to a form of gambling. Now, if you've listened to other shows, you know my relationship with my stepfather was super difficult. So this introduction like to gambling, well, it was it was loaded, right, with difficult emotions. But basically, I get my $1.25 of allowance each week that I would do for my household chores. And then we'd throw each coin up against a wall. Now, it was all the money I had. And whoever got closest to the wall with each coin won. I don't think I ever won. I lost my allowance pretty much every single week for like a year. Each time thinking, I'm going to win this time. Like I'd eventually get lucky or skilled enough to not lose it. You know, it never even dawned on me that he was that much older than I was and that he had been practicing for a long time. And I really did lose my money. Like I wouldn't get to go to the movies. So there's an entirely different message I got here. And that one is you won't keep your money or you won't make money on luck or the risk throwing it against the wall rather than doing it through effort, right? And you're not going to win. The other thing that happened is I noticed something about my personality, which was I didn't give up. I just kept trying and trying. So this was something that has become a bit of a hallmark about the way I think of money or think about life now, right? I just don't give up. But instead of using my energy to beat the odds, which I lost faith in, I try, right, now to use it to work on something that's characterized through my creative effort. Now, that said, there's still an element, right, of not having control of how it goes and having to put that effort out, not knowing how it's going to go. So let me stop for a moment and wrap this around the conversation. Because you've been courting a relationship with money for a long time. And when I say courting, I mean, it's a thing. You could even think of it as a person if you wanted to, like your money person, right? And you probably have very distinctive events or stories that would illuminate something about how you relate to it too. Because money is power. Money is power. I really don't mean that it's all powerful, but it gives us a sense of power when we have it or can generate it or create it because it allows us to feel like we can have what we want. We can cause our lives to be what we want. We can meet our needs, and we can take care of things that matter to us. So you may have a love-hate relationship with the idea that money is power. And I'd ask you to look very closely at that. How do you hold it? Is it the bane of our existence? Is it a nemesis? Is it something you chase or covet? Do you pound the sand to get to it? Do you sacrifice your own sense of comfort and ease to go after it? It's worth looking at. So the people around you play a huge role in how you grow up to think about money. So let's take it into saving money. So there were no messages that reinforced me saving money other than like saving for something specific that I wanted. But the idea that I'd save money for a long time in the future, that was nowhere in our space. So in truth, while my mom was helping me generate an empowered relationship with money, she didn't necessarily cultivate a long-term building of it. You know, we mostly lived in rented homes. We moved quite a bit. There was little actually conversation about saving money. So the money I was generating, even that money from those little puppy dogs, it didn't get saved. So this is where we have to talk about fear. Why do we want to make money? Now, I've already said we love making money because it gives us a sense of power to meet our needs. But there's some fear in there too. Why do we want to save money? You know, if fear is playing a big role in the motivation to do either, then it lessens the power that we bring to it. It won't feel as rich and full. And the other thing that doesn't make money work for you is when you are generating it out of necessity, as if you have no choice in the matter. I've read lots of articles over the last year and a half about people now making a choice that now that they've worked from home and you know, they've seen that they can do it, that they're leaving their jobs and they realize they can make a living in an entirely different way or go find a job that better supports their whole life. You know, that's been one of the positives of all that's gone down with COVID, right? Finally, it dislodged those stuck spaces for some people. And it helped them to realize that they could actually do something else that would make money. And they could actually survive. Removing this no choice thing, no choice thing that I'm talking about, and actually confronting the fear about doing it. So if you're listening up to this point, I'd like you to stop right now and think about how fear and having, I'm putting parentheses around this, no choice, play a role in how you think about money. And if you're able to see anything here, this is where you're going to want to go deeper inside of the events and the stories and the experiences of your life and begin to untangle and unwind and tease out what was really going on and what really happened. Because remember, when we're young, we take these lessons of life on and they lodge themselves in our subconscious, which basically corresponds with us now making them true lessons. But not all those lessons are necessarily true, right? That thing about me lagging coins against a wall, there's a risk element to doing life, right? Being at risk in general with our emotions and our sense of self and even just walking out the front door. So what I took away from that, which is take no risk, isn't necessarily a true lesson. And that's what I want to go back and be able to relook at. So here, like this one, you've got to save for a rainy day. You never know when you're going to get fired and lose your job. These messages are fear-based and they're choiceless. And they really don't validate the powerful reasons for saving money or holding on to money that you may have for yourself. You've got to save for a rainy day. No, that's not true. Why would you want to save? What are the benefits from having a financial cushion in your life? What would be enhanced? How would your sense of security gain because of having money in the bank? You see, those questions, creating with money, it's no different than creating a loving relationship or creating on a canvas with paint and mixed media. You don't do it because you're afraid of the rainy day. You do it because you explore how you want to live, what you're going to get out of those choices that you're making, because you get that you actually have choice. See, underneath it all, there are these universal elements to creating anything. And one of them is clear out the fear and no choice stuff. It has you create from a starting place that's like a hole in the ground that you're trying to fill up with something that's missing, rather than starting at ground zero and building from theirs. And a lot of times, I really believe it's why we don't get ahead or why we don't see the pile grow, because we're actually filling in a hole that we don't even realize we're filling. I cannot say enough about not letting fear or no choice be the driving factor in your money actions. Get straight with yourself. Get honest about this. Really look for where it's true. The work that you'll want to do to go back into your youth and actually look for where those messages and events shaped your current relationship to money can really blow out the doors, right? Completely. All right. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about lack and embarrassment. And if anything I've said is sticking with you, feel free to call in. I'd love to hear from you. And the number is 202-570-7057.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Well, welcome back. I'm Sam Parrotto, and you are listening to Expedition Self. We're talking about money today. Money. And before we went on break, I mentioned that we were going to come back and talk about lack and embarrassment. So when you think about money, I have no doubt that you are, like, the thoughts are washing through your mind right now, that you're having memories about key moments that stuck with you, that have made an impact. And so, I've heard lots of stories from people who didn't have enough to survive. They didn't have enough food. They went to their refrigerator. There was no milk. They wore clothes that were hand-me-downs and had holes in them. They weren't able to get the medical care or the dentistry that they needed, or they'd have to walk in the snow to school because the family walked like 6 miles because the family didn't have a car. This extreme lack is actually, it's quite traumatizing, and it usually carries with it a ton of shame and embarrassment. when I listen to people share their stories, they describe it as though like their family was looked down upon, or where they felt like they're below the standard, some standard, right? The idea that your family doesn't have enough in some way is like a statement of inadequacy, and it kind of shouts your actual value to the world. And shame and embarrassment in the body is probably the hardest thing to actually feel, the sensation of it. And so the problem with trauma at this level, that's left unworked, is it often translates into like an extreme response, one that's like so intense and focused that someone never lets themselves be there again, or one that actually perpetuates the very thing that got started. See, trauma left unworked in anyone's life is going to absolutely influence the present in a way that limits it. It just can't go any other way. A lot of times when I see curriculums for programs that work with creating more freedom around money, they don't work this piece enough. The shame and embarrassment that comes from the traumatizing lack. So in this moment, imagine a kind of thermometer in your mind. So if you had to rate the degree of lack you felt when you were young, give it like between 1 and 10, 10 being a lot and 1 being almost nothing, what number would you choose? Now, I'm going to suggest every number warrants going inside. Of course, I would suggest that. But if it's over 3, then I'd suggest there's probably even more there. So what lack in any way causes is a reaction or a backlash. So here's an example of what it did for me. Now, this is a little story. So we collected blue chip stamps, or green stamps at the grocery store. And every time we bought groceries, I'd come home and I'd stick them in the little booklet, right? Once again, my mom said, sure, you can use them to get the things that you want. So I'd go through the book and I'd pick out all the things I wanted and I'd add it up. I think, if I remember correctly, there was one point when I needed something like 1,350 filled books to get all the stuff that I had checked off in the wish book, right? And I looked this up recently, and they say that there were 1,200 stamps in a book. So you can do the math. That's a ton of groceries that we would have had to buy. So the way the lack trauma showed up in me is that my want meter, it went way high, excessive. Like the backlash or the reaction to feeling traumatic lack, it caused me to then want way more than I actually needed or could play with or could use. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I had a reaction like I want everything inside of the places where I felt like I had less. And for others, it looks very different. For others, I happen to have someone in my life who moves into a more minimalistic or a space where it's like, no, I can live without these things. And they actually decide they need almost nothing, never wanting to spend a cent on anything that they absolutely don't need for fear that once it's gone, they'll never get it back. So traumatic lack also, it's in society, it translates to a ton of other emotional experiences. So let me say it this way. When our survival needs aren't met with a sense of power and possibility, then they begin to take a toll on our emotional needs and how we're going to operate in life. So I want to say this again. When our survival needs aren't met with a sense of power and possibility, they then begin to take a toll. Their chunks get taken out of our own sense of emotional needs and how we're going to actually get those needs met in life. So what happens is we start to feel as if what we need emotionally, like to be valued or acceptable or worthy and emotionally safe, it's not going to get met either. Now think about this for just a moment. We go from some level of lack, that number you put on your meter, and then we don't even realize it, but there's a connection to how we're going to feel as a human being who has other needs that need to be met. So this is why I say money is such a big subject. It's because it's embedded in our sense of self and our way of being in the world. And if we don't source it at its original place inside of us, then we're going to keep playing out the same stuff, making the same decisions, and having no way of getting to the source of where it all started. Right? Is that we are walking around the world unconscious a lot of the time as to how we got to who we are. and a lot of times it's like we want something different. We want to create something different, but we don't know where it started. And I'm suggesting that your relationship with money started in lack, and that relationship to money has something to do with how you get your emotional needs met. So this leads me to the other emotion I want to connect with traumatic lack, money, and this whole idea of being human, and it's embarrassment. So I have a couple of clients who share the same lack story, and it's all about like their participation in sports. And in one case, this guy, he wanted a pair of sneakers. And I think they were Converses, right? He was into basketball and he wanted these more than anything. But his mom, she brought home a pair from the consignment shop that were kind of torn up but wearable. But they weren't Converses. And so he wore them. And when he tells me the story, you can see the vulnerability on his face, because this embarrassment, right, that's so present that he felt like he couldn't fit in. And even someone made a crack about it. Like to watch this written all over his face. You see, embarrassment in the human body, it makes us want to turn inside out, to literally hide our eyes from the world, and to go inside as a way to escape. And we spend a lot of our lifetimes doing things so we never have to feel embarrassed. I cannot tell you what a big deal this is. And so there's something liberating about working on money to the psyche, because when you work on money, you're going to get to find places where you are avoiding embarrassment. And wherever you avoid embarrassment, that's a lot to say in one mouthful. Wherever you avoid that is a place that you're missing out on life. Another person I know wanted a special bowling ball, and he thought he was getting it for Christmas. He was so excited that he was going to finally have this bowling ball so he could, show up and play on the team the way he wanted to, or in the league. I guess they're called leagues. So when Christmas came, he opened up the bowling ball. What he got was his brother's hand-me-down that had a big chip in it and didn't work. I'm imagining you just sat there in that moment and got that feeling, the disappointment, and at the same time, the conflict of understanding that the family couldn't do anything different. And really all the feelings that would have been wrapped up in not having that thing that he really wanted, having to deal with it. So truly, it seems like everyone who has dealt with any lack has some story about a particular garment or a tool or a camp or an experience that because they didn't have what everyone else had, they felt less than, and as a result embarrassed, and as if they didn't belong. So I just can't even say it enough. If you don't work through embarrassment, which means you go back and experience it and really get in there and allow your psyche to be with that moment, it'll have a grip on you for your whole life. Because embarrassment and shame are like secret soul sucks. And half the time we don't feel them at work on us. They just shape and curve and curl around how we think about life and how we make our choices and decisions. So a person who is gripped by unconscious embarrassment just won't experience the joy of life that they could. And this is true of me. Wherever that's true, I just don't have that same level of joy that I might, because we're always at some level trying to work out the scenario that played out around the sneakers or around that camp that we wanted to go to when all of the college scouts would be there to see us play. And so often it then translates to this opportunity that just didn't pan out. And that then ties to losses that are never gotten over. Not really. So I'm going to take a side trip here for just a minute. Now remember, if this is triggering you in any way and you'd like to talk about it, feel free to call in. So this conversation people have about leaving the past in the past, it's rampant, right? It's not possible because the past never leaves us alone. Your conscious mind may think it does, but it is completely working behind the scenes. It is always at play in limiting and constraining and shaping and directing our current decisions. And the more we don't validate that, work it out, then the more we pull it along. I think if you could really visualize all of the stuff we have that we're dragging along behind us, it would look like a little ant pulling a trash can, a big trash can full of stuff that is all smelly and gooey and gross. And we don't realize it because it lives inside of us and it feels like it's the way it is. This is why it's so much more complex than just let the past go or stop going over what didn't work for you. It's so much more because we have to go back and find the experiences and the stories. And then we have to be willing to feel what we didn't want to feel back then, what was so hard to feel, so we can stop being afraid of feeling. I have a story along these lines. So when I was in the last year of elementary school, 8th grade, there were these jeans that everybody was wearing. They were called dittos, and they had this seam that was like an upside down U that wrapped around your bum. They were all the rage, and they were expensive. So we didn't have the money to have them, and it was obvious in school who had money to afford them and who didn't. So I was, lamenting and talking to my mom about not having them. Enter my generating mom. And she said, well, let's make you a skirt, a denim skirt. Do dittos make skirts? And I said, no, I don't think they do. And she said, oh, that's all the better. She said, let's make a denim skirt and we'll put a label on it that says dittos. Now, you can imagine being 13 years old. I rolled my eyes and I'm like, oh, I don't know about this, right? So I was definitely not all that game when she suggested it, but I went along with it. I mean, shoot, I was going to get this cool new skirt that she was going to sew me. So I wore it to school, skeptically thinking, of course, it was kind of silly, but secretly I was proud, right, of having this label on my skirt. Do you know that I had 3 different girlfriends say, I didn't know dittos made skirts. I can't even tell you what that was like for me. My sense of lack and embarrassment, it did get completely transformed because of this creative approach. And it kind of debunked the idea of the label. And it made it workable. And of course, right, in my lifetime, I get to see how I thought these things were going to make me fit in. And I also got to see that, like, as a human being, we come up against immovable aspects of life. And the most obvious one is our mortality. But unless we can transform how we operate when we come up against all of the other seemingly immovable experiences, then we're kind of locked up, and we don't have to be. That experience with that skirt really started to teach me workability and movability. It also, right, I had to kind of let go of it looking a certain way. So these big life lessons that looked like it was stemming from money. Money is one of the great players in our learning how to be human schoolroom. because it's tied to our sense of being safe and acceptable and worthy and lovable and wanted. That ditto story had everything to do with my sense of belonging within my peer group. And no matter how you roll the dice, we're all looking for the community that we feel like we fit in. One where we say, yes, I'm home. So if we can look for the way money has played itself out in our life and take the case that we're supposed to be finding ways to make the immovable movable, then we've got a whole new way to create the life we want. So you can see that if we just leave it the way it is, however you got started, then you're kind of destined to keep doing the same things over and over, or being a reaction to what started it. So one way to kind of assess like where you are with money is to think about how tight do you hold on to it? Do you see it as flowing from one hand to another? Or do you decide what something is worth to you? Or do you pay what someone else tells you it's worth? Like, what's the mindset that you really, really bring when you think about letting it leave your hands? When we come back, I'm going to share a story that really goes over 10 years about how I learned about the way I hold on to money.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour,
if you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Well, welcome back. I'm Sam Parrotto, and you are listening to Expedition Self while we're talking about money. And before we went to break, I asked the question, which is how tightly do you hold on to your money? And I want to share a story that it really went over a long time. And it was with Sandy Brown, who was one of my very first teachers, other than obviously my innovative, brilliant mother. And when I first started working with her, she told me how much she wanted to charge me. And it seemed very low to me. And so, especially given at the time that I could afford more. So I paid her more than her asking price. So years later, when my money stuff came to a head and I couldn't actually afford to pay her, she actually let me come for a year at no cost. Now, I didn't expect that in any way, but it was obviously a huge gift. And years after that, because I want you to get that much of what she taught me, I was able to bring into my work, and I was able to make my living at it. So I felt a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the lifestyle that I felt like I was getting to have because of what she gave to me, her heart and all that she knew. So I tried to buy her a car to say thank you for all that she had provided for me. You know, I wanted to give back what she had provided. You know, I in some ways I didn't. There was a little piece in there about not wanting to make the layer of it all cleaned up, like, you know, that we would be fair and equal together. And she said this to me. She said, you know, this is kind of insulting. My gift, my life's work, it really can't have a price tag. It's priceless. There's absolutely no way to place a number value on the relationship and the work that we've done together. And then she said, money is just a way to create an energy exchange or an agreement. That lesson was so important, that money actually has no value to us other than as an energy exchange. So the tip you leave for the waitress is an exchange to acknowledge that person's gift of heart and effort. It's not to prove anything, or it's not to say this is how much value you had. Now, I realize what I just spoke isn't the way most of us think about it, but it does put together a new way to think about money, some place to follow. I read a book a couple of years ago about salaries and compensation in companies. And it said, money isn't an issue unless it's an issue. And what that meant was that you want to pay people what they feel good about, that matches their sense of effort and your sense of contribution. But it in no way actually represents the true exchange or gift of one person bringing something to another, or to a business or an organization or an activity. See, we place arbitrary values on jobs, but that's just it. They're arbitrary. So what am I trying to get at here? I'm saying that the more we can separate our sense of being around money and realize the value and gift of our being that we walk in, that we give of ourselves from the amount that it actually is, the more free flow of energy we're going to experience. Right? When we relegate every moment to what is it worth through the money lens, we actually tighten, right? So it's how tight do you hold your money? We tighten our hold on it, and it flows less. So this goes into, what do we deserve to make? And I think this is going to sound super controversial, but really, we don't want to put this kind of self-assessment around money, because why would you want your sense of value attached to what you do, or the idea that it's even connected? You want to walk in life knowing that you are an expression of yourself, that you're creative expression of yourself. Placing a dollar value on it diminishes it. A job pays X. We decide if we want to do that job for that money, if it feels reasonable to us, not because it's proof of our value. You see, we never want to put our sense of value into the idea of money, like I mentioned earlier. And if we're unaware of the way money is attached to our sense of being, then we look for that money to prove our worth. We give it a power, and we give other people a power that actually doesn't support our creative expression. It's not coming from a whole space, or space that's enough, or a space that's about generating. I had the opportunity over my lifetime to set my own rates. And I want to share something about that with you. Every single time I set my rate higher than in my belly I felt like I deserved, right? You see where I was tying it. I basically did the job in such a way that I would make less money. I'd end up spending more time than I budgeted. I'd add services so that it would feel more fair. At one point, I think I was about 34, I decided that I was going to make the same amount of money in 4 days that I did in 5. So that meant I had to do 2 things. I had to develop a product so I could charge a flat fee for it, right? That was like more scalable, didn't take my hours, and I was going to have to increase my rates. So that brought me to the next challenge, how to be ready to ask for it, or lose clients over it, or have to go find new ones. You see, all that self-worth stuff going on in that, it was important to my learning about my life, right? Because it took me a while to detach my self-worth from that and to actually decide that I priced myself where I wanted to price myself. And it was up to me to generate the type of business that paid me for it. And it had less to do with my deeper sense of self-value. Now, self-value work is lifelong. It never stops. But utilizing subjects like money as a way to practice and look deeper, that's the key, right, to self-learning. So my idea of this is what I deserve collided with what my sense of self could actually stand in. They weren't in sync. And, I've watched my sense of self dictate how much money I've always made. Because underneath it all, I'm still filling those holes from traumatic lack. Okay, so in some ways, I'm saying money is a huge conversation. And I'm also saying get money out of the self-worth one. Because for most of us, we haven't done all the work we need to, and it's overlapped. Or you could say the two collapse in on each other like they did in my life. So in this area, at this moment, you want to look at how satisfied you are with the money you've made or are making. And how does it connect with and match up to your sense of your own self-worth? So what makes up self-worth? It starts with all those messages in early life and the amount of lack we lived with, the feelings of shame and embarrassment that went with it all, and how we interact with all of that, whether it is through defiance or capitulation. Those are big words. And I'm using these words because I'm reinforcing that money has power and it has power over you. So as long as you are reacting to these aspects of life that formed your relationship with money, then you're not in your power. Defiance will only get you so far in competition, right? Capitulation, just accepting it the way it is, only gets you so far. But creative generating of money and abundance in your life, wow, that is infinite and limitless. All right. So we can't talk about money without mentioning envy, jealousy, and resentment. What happens when you see someone who is a have or a have not, or when you are either a have or a have not? You see, these early experiences growing up, right? Well, actually, they do grow up, right? And when they grow up, they collect new data. You collect new data to support the conclusions you drew. So if you return to my story about lagging with coins, I have a belief that risk-taking will cause me to lose. So even though I put effort into things and have a sense of creative generating, I still, underneath it all, have a bunch of feelings around losing as I threw those coins against the wall. And so I'm at the point in my life where I need to alter my relationship with risk-taking. It's had me stay in certain situations way longer than I should have. And in general, I stay when I should move as it relates to money. I haven't saved the way I could have, and I had the room to do it. And I've been wasteful because I'm a reaction to not having enough. And I've collected examples of people who aren't having as much fun in life as I do spending money, or of situations where people were so penny pinching that it felt like it didn't honor, right, what was happening around them. This is not the nice side of being human, I gotta tell you. Because when we collect data to support our inside stuff, as we do it, we judge others without really looking at the story behind what brought them there and what brought us there to make our case. And you bring this into any relationship, including the ones you have in your job or your marriage or your relationship, you're going to find that the money conversation becomes a line in the sand, a place of polarity, and it can get very heated. You see, because the way someone relates to money translates also into how they give of themselves. So you can see that the money, the having of it, the sharing of it, the building of it, right? The understanding it in others, it warrants your attention. The sobering part is being honest with yourself about what you do with it. So this can bring you to say, why don't I make more money? You'd want to work with the ideas I talked about earlier, but then you want to work with how you think about providing something that resonates with your inner soul and spirit and can be offered into the world and shared. You know, about 2 years ago, I decided to get into this whole online course world thing, to take what I do out of the corporate and bring it to an audience. So I take this course from Leonie Dawson about how to launch in 40 days. And the first thing she said was, make a list of all the things you're either interested in or know something about or have experienced. It was fascinating The things people put down on their list. Oh my gosh, it was like, right, everyone has something to share or teach from their perspective. I mean, look what's happened in the home organizing and cleaning up market. So my point is, there is no one on this planet that doesn't have something to teach that someone else would find value in. No one. What gets in the way is when the not enough and the self-value messages and the embarrassment and the shame and the resentment and the fear and the traumatic lack, they work behind the scenes and they fill up the day, making ends meet, dealing with everyday life, being responsible, being a caretaker. All of it takes your time. So the best way to look at how do you make more money is to look at what you do with your time. Where do you place it? Where do you spend it? And when you look at this, you're then going to look at your energy level and what causes you to feel freed up. Because being bound up and stuck and contained, it doesn't provide the oxygen that your brain really needs to expand. Freeing yourself up, how do you do that? It has everything to do with making room and inviting in that next thing that would bring abundance to you. And when we do this, we circle all the way around and revisit just how important is your freedom and desire, I couldn't get that word out, to create to you. How much do you believe that you get to have the life you want? And it's not about going and saying, I deserve to make more money, because that's likely tied to that hole of lack I spoke about. You know, saying I deserve has kind of a defensive quality. It's making up for something, comes from those empty places. We want to say, how do I want my life to go? Now, I know this is a subtle thing. It may even sound the same to you, but it really isn't. Because one of them is about making up for something, being charged up and proving something. But the what kind of life do I want? Who do I want to be? Do I believe I can have, that I can create? This is one where you're the student of it all. And money is no longer in the power position because it's more like an ingredient in your tasty, delicious dish. You put it to work for you. You see it as something transform. And you work to disentangle your self-image with it by becoming more and more conscious of it. So I hope our conversation today has helped you start to think about how money is power, how you empower it, how you show up in your life to take the stuff away from it that really is coming from lack, and how you get it into your arsenal, your toolkit of creating the life that you want. So I found a poem called Golden Freedom by Amos Russell Wells. Here we go. The love of money is a chain, binding souls to greedy pain. The love of money is a jail, bare abode of hunger pale. The love of money is a czar, lord of slaves that wretches are. The love of money is a wall, bleak and barren, strong and tall. The love of money is a pit, foulest creatures live in it. The love of money is a mine where the sunbeams never shine. Worst of all captivities that the love of money is. Oh, be free, superbly free from its cramping misery. So on that note, I want to say thank you for being with me this afternoon. And if you'd like to be notified each week of the show, so it's an easy click, go to samparrotto.com and you can register right there. And we put all the poems on the website after each show. Thank you. Have a great week.